All right, welcome back to another episode of Real Talk. Jeff here and Brad. Brad, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. Anytime the Steelers can pick up a win, week feels a little bit better. NBA kicking off, all's good on my end over here. I'm enjoying it. Full swing. We got all four sports today. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, hockey just kicked off the regular season within the last week. Baseball, obviously, it's October, so postseason play, and we're down to 4 teams. And the NFL, anytime you're in October, first off, any game in the NFL is great, but mid October, you're really starting to understand who teams are. These top tens are getting slightly easier. And then obviously NBA tip off, which is always a cool time of the year. So, uh, yeah, I mean, it's good to be back on this couch with my Real Talk tee, nice and comfy, kicking back, talking sports. And I put out a mailbag question post today on the Facebook page. Got quite a bit of responses. Figured we'd kick off with that today. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. First question. I have a feeling as a joke. It comes in from Brett Weber. Should I trade Hawkinson? I think he means fantasy football. I mean, there's a lot of context with that question.
It's got to
Uh,
be. He's asking for himself. I think it's got to be fantasy football.
but no, I think the one bright spot of Detroit right now is Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift. Fantasy wise, I think they're
Totally
both playing
agree.
great. Yeah,
Totally
yeah,
agree.
yeah. Anthony Du Bois writes in thoughts on McDermott electing to go for it instead of a chip shot to send the game to overtime. That's part one of his two questions, actually. What do you, the Monday nighter last night? I don't know if
Yeah.
you stayed
No.
up.
No. No.
Okay.
I watched every snap. Two things. One, it was the right it was the right call. Like you absolutely, I had no problem with the call. It's gonna sometimes you're gonna be wrong, sometimes you're gonna be right with the outcome. I mean, Josh Allen slipped. I mean, what are the odds on that? He usually picks that up. You would assume, and the way the offenses were playing, what odds are better? Josh Allen picking up that first down or you winning the coin flip in overtime? Because it looked like whoever got the ball first was going to score a touchdown. If you watched the late third quarter into the fourth, both offenses were humming almost as if they were playing against air. So can't critique the decision. I know every time something goes wrong, the first thing to do now is second guess it and say what else should they have done. Sometimes it doesn't work out. You got to tip the cap to the Titans. They did get some pressure on the left side there, but I mean, Josh Allen slips at the end of the day. What if they had the same situation next week? I know I was watching it as a Bills fan. I had money on the game. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for me. But watching it as a Bills fan, I'm like, you go for this. Like kicking the field goal wasn't even an option in my mind.
Yeah, yeah. I first off, anytime somebody goes out to win a game, that's the right decision. Period. Period. Um, you could argue that Buffalo is probably a more talented team and has aspirations of bigger things this year than what Tennessee does. But Tennessee doesn't see it that way. So it's plus they were on the road. You're a road team with the ball in your hands, and you have Josh Allen as your quarterback. Who I asked a lot of people this week on the Facebook page, and we got a lot of responses and pretty consensus. A pretty consensus pick was Josh Allen as a top five quarterback. A lot of people had him top three. Um, yeah, you put the ball in his hands and you try to win the game. I think we agree there. His second question: how do you feel about Rodgers' banter towards the Chicago crowd after scoring the TD that ended up being the dagger in the game? I can go ahead and start with this. You don't care.
Sure.
Does Aaron Rodgers own the Bears? He moves to 21-5 against them all time. Yeah, he owns the Bears. I mean, and I'm sorry, but it was a close, competitive game. And I've seen the pictures. There are plenty of fans flipping Aaron Rodgers off. Why not? Chirping back. I mean, Michael Jordan has been chirping back for his entire career. LeBron James famously will do it. If there's a front row fan that's nagging him too much in the game, he'll start chirping back. Um, you occasionally see different players that just get into that mode where it's me against the fans. I'm all for it. Aaron Rodgers played a pretty solid game, nothing spectacular by any means, but he's 21-5 against the Bears. I mean, he's great against them.
When you look at the Houston Astros versus Boston Red Sox, and Alex Carrera does the "It's My Time" celebration. and then the Boston Red Sox player does it, and Correa comes out and says, "I love that. We need more of that in baseball." Or in hockey during a series when there's actually fist fights during games, or in basketball when there's trash talk, pushing and shoving, and you separate. Same thing in football. I love all the banter and all that during the game because once you do whatever you can to rally your guys, get the best result, win, and then when the result is finished, good game, man. See you next time. Good job. And then it's squashed. But in between those 60 minutes, I think that is awesome to just rev up your team and get the fans involved. That's what the fans are there for. You don't think those fans, even if it was negative towards their team, enjoyed the experience more than when they flipped off Aaron Rodgers and then he gives it back, "I own you." It sucks now, but like it just makes you respect them more after the game's over. It wasn't anything vulgar. He wasn't like doing hip thrusts towards them or flipping them off or anything bad. He's just, "I own you, man." Like it's like the most classic form of trash talk, and the statistics happen to back up what he said. I think everyone I talk to, especially around my age and even not my age, everybody that I've talked to loves the banter in sports because at the end of the game, you shake the guy's hand across from you, man or woman, and good game, man. Good competition. There's got to be a winner and a loser. I loved everything about what Aaron Rodgers did.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Move on here. Jamie Lato becoming a frequent question ask every single week. He's got two parts here. He's a Broncos fan. Do you think Vic Fangio and Pat Sherman both are fired by Denver's bye week, which is week 11?
No, if they do get fired, it would be after the season. I haven't even heard anything about them being on the hot seat. But you start off 3-0 against some bad teams, you lose some games. There's still a lot of season left. I don't see mid-season firings. I don't think that's how they run their business in Denver. I think it would be a postseason type move if they decide to do that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they started off 3-0. Their opponents, it's pretty well documented. They had 0 wins of those first 3 weeks. You play who's in front of you. They've dropped 3 opponents in a row. This week they got Cleveland. Cleveland's beat up. I just don't think that Denver's as bad as their 3-game losing streak, but I also don't think they're as good as they were when they were 3-0. They're somewhere in the middle. They're probably a 500 football team, and right now they're kind of beat up as well. Obviously missing KJ Hamler and missing Jerry Jeudy, and they've had some slight QB situations with Drew Lock and Teddy getting hurt, and I think this team is. This is the easiest way to say it. They're coasting for Aaron Rodgers at this point. I don't think they think they're a Super Bowl team. I think they have a good roster, and that's kind of where it sits. So.
Yeah. Well, you said there was a second part?
Yeah, second part is if Vic Fangio were to be fired, is Eric Bieniemy even a possibility for Denver to get? I think Eric Bieniemy is a possibility for a lot of teams. I mean, he wants to be a head coach. They have a talented offense, especially if Aaron Rodgers is there. I think that becomes a more juicy job. Would you agree?
100%. And Eric Bieniemy, he's not leaving the Chiefs in the middle of the season.
No.
So even if it gets to the end of the season and he decides to go, there's going to be, typically there's 4 or 5, sometimes 6 coaching jobs open. If there's no definitive quarterback there, is he going to want to go? If there's not a top 5 pick or an established quarterback, is that where he's going to choose? Because I feel like other things are going to be open. Does he want to coach Derek Carr and that Raiders offense that seems to be humming? Because that could be a spot that's open. You look at maybe some other places where coaches are on the hot seat. Chicago, he gets Justin Fields in that roster. Would he want to go there instead of Denver? I think if Eric Bieniemy had his choice between some of these teams that could have openings, I don't know if Denver's at the top of that list when the quarterback situation isn't that enticing. And I think the Broncos are too good for a top 5 or 6 pick.
Yeah, I think that Denver is. They need to be bad because they need the draft capital to acquire one of 2 players, Aaron Rodgers or Deshaun Watson. And I think if those are the 2 guys, I think Eric Bieniemy takes the job. And I don't think it's even arguable. I think they'd be a good team. But as of right now, that's all just up in the air. There's so many ifs, ands, whats. And as of right now, Vic Fangio is still the coach, and they have a 500 record, and so do the Chiefs. And nobody's firing Andy Reid today. So Right now, I'm sorry. They're one game out of the lead of their division. I'm not calling for anybody's job right now.
Yeah, and if they finish 8-9 and finish third or fourth in the division, does Eric Bieniemy want to go to the division where his quarterback is Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater, and the other three are Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Derek Carr? I don't know.
Yeah. Kyle Miller writes in. This one's got to be for you. How does a running back not chip T.J. Watt on 3rd and long?
There's, I try and I told everybody because, sometimes those late primetime games, I work early in the morning. So a lot of people I work with, hey, what happened last night? And I told about 7 or 8 people. The same exact thing when they said what happened last night. One team had TJ Watt and one team didn't. I mean, the teams were pretty much even everywhere. Both teams were running the ball pretty well. They took some shots. They were able to get first downs, couple field goals, couple touchdowns. But once it hit late in the game and in overtime, that's the problem. They did try and chip TJ Watt. I said this again, and maybe it's petty being a Steelers fan. Aaron Donald's not the only guy in the league that gets triple teams. TJ Watt, if the play lasts more than 3 or 4 seconds in the pocket, you're toast. I mean, especially with Cameron Hayward out there as well. I mean, the Steelers have a ruthless defense. Their offense is so poor that it oftentimes the team as a whole is average to below average, but the front seven's ridiculous, still missing 2 of their top 4 or 5 guys. But TJ Watt, I mean, he goes down the outside. The guard and tackle follow him. Running back comes out there. He gets face masked, pushes it off back the other way. And guess what? There's Geno Smith trying to run for it. TJ Watt's going to TJ Watt. I mean, the Seahawks tried their best. But, when you talk about the Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Khalil Mack, Aaron Donald, sometimes your best isn't enough. And that's why those guys are so special to have on the front 7 there.
Corey Wilson writes in, best team in the NFC.
Cardinals.
Obviously, this is our power rankings pod, so we will get to that later. But I don't have a problem giving this spoiler, and I've said this a couple different times. The best team in the league right now is Arizona. I mean, they're undefeated, and they've played several good teams, and they beat them all. But I've been on record saying this, and I'm not backing down for this. Tampa's winning the Super Bowl. They're at least representing the NFC in the Super Bowl, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean they're the best football team right now, because there's injuries and things of that such nature. But the best team right now is, in my opinion, is Arizona, in the NFC at least.
Yep, I agree.
You agree?
Yep.
Jen Fisher.
Well, let me be clear real quick.
Go ahead.
I agree that the Cardinals are the best team. We'll wait till later to discuss everything else you got too.
Okay.
I agree that the Cardinals are the best team in the NFC.
I figured that's what you meant. Jen Fisher writes in, who's the most and least surprising player so far? There's a lot of people.
Okay.
So forgive us if we forget somebody, because I don't put anything into these questions until I'm reading them live. And same with Brad. This is completely off the top of the cuff. Who's your most surprising player so far?
Most surprising, without a doubt, is Trayvon Diggs. The man's got 7 picks in 6 games. He's got more catches, receiving yards, and touchdowns than Jalen Reagor, the first-round pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. And he's got the same amount of touchdowns as his brother Stephon Diggs. When we talked about the top 20 corners, no one would have said Trayvon Diggs in their preseason rankings if they went to the top 20. And, I mean, he's absolutely balling out. Every time you turn on your TV on Sunday on the Red Zone or this or that, when they're recapping stuff, Trayvon Diggs is on your screen. I mean, you'd have to think that it's going to slow down, but I mean, he just joined Rod Woodson as the only other player in NFL history with 7 picks through their first 6 games, taking 2 to the house. I mean, in my opinion, I know a lot of people may pick quarterbacks or wide receivers, or a running back that did something. It's Trayvon Diggs, man, on defense. He's been lights out, and it came out of nowhere, really.
Yeah, I think you nailed that one on the head as far as most surprising, like, oh shit, out of nowhere, the Cowboys have a franchise cornerback. I think that's fair for most surprising. And Jen, I hope that's what you wanted to hear, because I'm sure you're a Cowboys fan.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give another one. Somebody that's been in the league a pretty long time that honestly nobody's talking about. And it's probably because their record's dog poop. Kirk Cousins always has been a solid player and usually puts up pretty good stats. But his stats this year are actually really good, like stupid good. 17, almost 1,800 yards passing. I believe that's top 5 in the league. I don't have it directly in front of me, but he's 13 touchdowns to 2 picks. And here's his quarterback ratings in every game this year: 112, 94, 66, which was bad. Okay. 128, 122, 106.
Crazy.
He's been really good.
The average has to be like 98 or 100
It's
even.
105. He's been really good. But in the wide receivers, if anybody has their wide receivers in fantasy football, you know how good Kirk Cousins has been, because Thielen's putting up career-like numbers. Justin Jefferson's putting up great numbers. It's just like, wow. I just that was one that stood out to me, just off the top of my head, because you went Diggs. I was gonna go Diggs too, but I wanted to give somebody else. So least surprising. Let me go first this time.
Have it.
I say this in the sense of I'm not surprised this player did this. But I don't think it's I think it's for a lot of people. I don't think I'm in the minority here. I'm by no means in the minority saying I thought this and nobody else did. No, I'm not surprised, and I don't think anybody is. Matthew Stafford's playing really well with the Rams now that he has a good coach and a comparable roster. Was that fair? Matthew Stafford is the least surprising. I think he's played exceptional. But in my opinion, we should have expected this. He's always been a very good player, been able to pass the rock, and the only 2 times in his entire career where he had a top 10 defense, they were playoff teams. Obviously, we know the Rams have a good defense. They have Jalen Ramsey. They have Aaron Donald. They're well coached. They have a roster. Cooper Kupp's putting up, everybody keeps saying it, it's almost getting annoying, but he's putting up 07 Randy Moss numbers. I mean, he looks unguardable. Do you have one outside of Stafford there?
Yeah, least surprising and at the top of the game is Derrick Henry. I mean, every time he has these he's having all these monster games. And when's the last time you went into work or went to your friend like, dude, can you believe Derrick Henry? No, your reaction is the same thing. You look at your dude and like, it's Derrick Henry, dude. Like, just doing what he's doing. Like,
yeah,
he's like 200 and some yards above the next leading rusher. His yards after contact is further than Nick Chubb. Derrick Henry after contact would be the second leading rusher in the NFL right now. And it's like, you look at your friend like, I mean, we'll get to it in the real talk or in the power rankings, and it's like, dude, are you gonna knock the Bills down? They couldn't stop Derrick Henry.
Who can?
Derrick Henry though. Like,
who does? Who does stop Derrick Henry?
He's on top of the game, and it's not surprising at all. I wanted to go with Brady in that sense. But the fact that he's 44, he can never be the least surprising player ever again, because every single time he steps out, he's the oldest player to ever do what he's doing. And that's still kind of surprising, because when are you going to fall off, my guy? So it's like he couldn't be the answer. But again, it's like Brady's leading the league in passing and Tampa's 5-1. Brady, though. Like, you know what I mean? It's not really surprising, but it is. So he was a tricky one. But I say Derrick Henry because he's the only guy that's really always going to be talked about as a top player, potential MVP candidate from the running back position. And you're like, well, obviously it's Derrick Henry. He's going to do that.
We're going to come back to something you just said. I wanted to ask it today. Didn't know if you'd have time, but you brought it up, so I want to come back to it later.
Okay.
Dan, he writes in, for most people that listen to the Michigan pod, you know that Dan's a co-host on that. I think he's being silly. Does Tom Brady's hairstyle set the tone for each season? It's really funny that he asked this question, though, because I actually responded. I'm going to respond here on the pod. It's an underrated question, because most years Tom Brady has a different hairstyle, and a lot of people correlate some of his hairstyles to play. The year that he had his long hair, he threw 39 touchdowns, 4 picks, and won the MVP. I don't know. Maybe the dude put stock in his hair. Look good, feel good, right? Feel good, play good.
Yeah, as the co-host of this podcast, we don't always have to agree or always disagree. I don't even want to entertain this question from Dan, to be honest. Does his hairstyle dictate play? If it does, that's some stuff. That's next level. Like, I'm not gonna try and figure that out. Like, I just won't do it.
Well, I want to stay on Tom Brady for just a second, and it's only because you kind of brought up something that I wanted to ask you. Didn't know if we'd have time, but we're already here. I listen every week to it's called Let's Go. It's a Tom Brady podcast with Jim Gray. He does
Right.
two athletes. He does Tom Brady every week, and he interviews Larry Fitzgerald as well. Go out and look it up. It's called Let's Go. It's on Sirius XM Radio or wherever you listen to your podcast. But he asked Tom Brady because again, it came up that Tom Brady was quoted saying not only could Tom Brady play till he's 50, he says that he could actually play till he's 55, but has no intentions to because he wants to be a dad still. He wants to have family, and he just doesn't think that he could continue his excellence into 55. But he does think that he could physically do it. And it makes me pose the question, and I want to pose it to you. Outside of Michael Jordan or Barry Sanders, because in my opinion, those players retired too early. So I'm not looking for too early. Is it a unique situation, and does it give Tom Brady a little bit of extra credibility that he's probably, and it hasn't been done yet, so it's hard to give exact, but I'm going to assume, and I think it's fair to assume at this point. Do you think it gives him a little bit extra credibility, extra to his legacy, that he's probably going to walk away from the game on his own terms and still be an elite player?
So
Do you
re-ask that
understand?
one more time.
Okay. Do you think it adds to his legacy? Do you think it gives him extra credibility? Do you think it's something that's pretty underrated about him that he's probably more than likely, because it hasn't been done yet, so it's hard to give
Right.
exact.
Right.
He's probably going to walk away from this game on his own terms and still be an elite player. And here's my example: Peyton, let's be honest, was carried by a defense the last year he was in the league, and
Yeah.
he was throwing ducks.
No, we get it.
Brett Favre, unfortunately, the wheels came off his last season in Minnesota and had to retire. As of right now, Brady looks like an outlier. He's 44 years old. He's already surpassed Peyton and Favre in doing things that, and we just said last week on the pod that we think he's the best quarterback. Do you think it gives a little bit more that he's probably going to walk away from the game? And obviously, players that walk away too young are different. Like Jordan had several more years, chose not to play anymore. Barry Sanders had several more years, chose not to play anymore. I'm talking about specifically this dude outplayed his career.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it gives any more or less. I think it's cool that you can walk away on your own terms. You know, it sucks sometimes to see players get injured or be shells of themselves and then kind of like limp out of the game. But yeah, absolutely, like it would solidify he came, he saw, he conquered, and then just left. Like it's always a cleaner ending when it's like, yeah, I could play next year, but I don't want you to see the decline, Tom Brady. Like having the mental awareness. Now it is nice when you can play 24 seasons, so maybe, and still have that option. But like, you know, it would have been nice if maybe like 2 years ago Ben was like, I'm hanging it up. But now I see Ben hurt his elbow and then change the entire way he's playing, and the offense looked terrible. And it's like, you know, I'm afraid that's how I'll remember Ben. But you know, you look at Jordan, no one remembers him as a wizard.
Yeah.
You know, you remember the Bulls. So I'm sure 10 years after he retires, be like, man, when Ben was shrugging guys off and throwing to Mike Wallace and Antoine. So yes, it'd be nice if Tom Brady, instead of being bad, you know, hypothetically throws 36 touchdowns, 8 picks, goes to the NFC Championship, loses, and he's like, you know what, peace with 7 rings. Like, you know, that would be, go out on his terms. Not, you know what, they barely make the playoffs, get skipped, and he's got to go, or you know, over 12 interceptions. Yeah, it always looks cleaner. And in hindsight, you could say the man played 24 seasons and never had a bad one. Like he was sustained excellence. It's always going to look cleaner than if it was, you know, in his 24th season, he had 21 touchdowns and 11 picks, and the defense carried him to 10-7. Like it would look better, obviously. I don't know if it gives his career more legacy than not, but you know, if he rode off at the top, he could always be like, yeah, I could have played 6 more years, but I was tired of just balling on kids. You know what I'm saying? Like it'd be cool for like a barroom conversation, but I don't know if it gives him any more. You know, he's already a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he's not even on the ballot yet. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to elaborate much more. I just wanted your opinion. I heard that today, and it's something I've always, obviously Tom Brady has said multiple times he wants to play till he's 45, but he kind of changed his direction with that comment today and basically said, I'm going to walk away on my terms because I believe I can. And
Yeah.
that's what,
I can play from 20 years old to 48 years old and still leave at the top of my game. I decline when I want to. I mean, that's kind of a cool
yeah,
thing to say.
yeah. All right. It is tournament time. Okay. Yes, we're going to do a little quick tournament. The Bengals, these are all 4-2 teams, by the way. Sorry, I should preface this. We're gonna go through the 4-2 teams. I know who you like,
Is
but I
this
want
another
you.
mailbag?
No, this is me. This is me.
Oh, okay.
This is a
Okay,
discussion
gotcha.
question that I came up with for this week.
Gotcha.
4-2 teams. There's a lot of them. I think there's some good ones, and I think there's some posers in there, but we'll see. Um, Bengals Raiders. Who's better today?
I like the Bengals.
Why?
I'm I think they have a better quarterback.
Okay.
Their running game is producing better right now than the Raiders. And actually, I trust their defense a little bit more as well. I think the both teams have a chance to go nuclear on offense, but I think the Bengals have more weapons, and obviously they have a sustained head coach, whether he's better or worse. But there's turmoil in the Raiders a little bit right now. And to be honest, I don't know. I just can't ever wrap my head around like the Raiders for some reason. I always kind of have them worse than they actually are in my own head, which is a flaw of mine. But I hardly ever take the Raiders, so I'll take the Bengals.
Yeah, I actually agree too, though. My reasons don't differ
Be
much,
a
but
great game.
the Bengals have a head coach right now. The Raiders don't. Um, both, I think the QB plays are pretty similar. I think the Bengals have 3 extremely good targets, potentially a growing tight end as well that nobody talks about.
Who's
What's that?
that guy Uzmo or whatever?
Yeah, yeah. And then the Raiders, in my opinion, they have one really good target and then an up and coming target with Ruggs. So, yeah, I just like the Bengals more. Bengals or the Chargers?
I like the Chargers. I think the Chargers offense has been a little bit more consistent, although sometimes the Bengals get red hot. Chargers offense been more consistent, and when it comes to Joey Bosa, Chris Harris Jr., Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr., I think they just have more playmakers on defense as well. And honestly, I just like Herbert more than Burrows. I think they have a better quarterback, better defense. Eckler and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, that's a nice trio as well. So I think the Chargers would beat the Bengals. I like the Chargers more.
Yeah, I agree, but I will say this: I'm the Bengals are becoming my new Panthers.
I can tell.
They're growing on me. They are a good watch,
Fun to watch.
and they are fun to watch. They're a good watch, and they're dangerous. They're that team that can go and beat anybody. Truly, right now. So, we're talking about a team that, as you like to call, hot dog water just 2 years ago, and now they are really, really
Got their
something
quarterback.
completely different. And they got some
Huh?
studs at receiver. They got 3 studs. All right. Chargers or Bills?
Bills.
Bills. Why?
Because, no team's going to win all their games, but I still think the Bills are one of the most complete teams in the NFL. They had a slip up week 1, then they've been like one of the hottest teams, and then they ran into the refrigerator on wheels and Derrick Henry. I still like the Bills. Their offense is top 2, top 3 in the league. It just glides up and down the field. They have a great tandem at safety. They've got an all-pro corner, and they've got a front 7 that's young and upcoming. I'll take the Bills over almost anybody. I think they're just the top team.
This is going to come off really weird, and I don't want it to. And I don't want you to feel pressured. I don't think you're going to. Titans or Bills?
If they played again today, I would take the Bills still.
Yeah.
Titans got them when
So
it mattered, but
just go with that. That's fine. Titans were at home on Monday night. I trust me. We're speaking the same language here. Rank the Titans out of the 4 teams I've already given you: the Bills, the Chargers, the Bengals, and the Raiders. Where do the Titans fit in there?
I'm gonna put them at 3. I'm gonna rank them right now. 5 is the Raiders, 4 is the Bengals, 3 is the Titans, 2 is the Chargers, 1 is the Bills. That's how I would rank them personally.
Yeah, I think we slightly disagree.
I like all of them though. They're all good teams, and I like watching them. If I'm not watching,
there's a reason they're all 4-2.
Raiders too. I know I'm not big on the Raiders, but they get dubs. You know, they're 4-2.
Yeah. They're right. There's a reason they're all 4-2. I'm with you kind of. Bills 1, Chargers 2.
Same.
I got Bengals 3.
Bengals.
In my opinion, here's why. It's really tough because obviously I've been a Tennessee guy now for 2 years, and the reason I'm a Tennessee guy is for what we just watched last night. When they're on, they are very good and can play with anyone. But then they lose to the Jets, and I understand they didn't have A.J. Brown, they didn't have Julio Jones, and it makes sense they would lose to the Jets. But there's also times they just lay stinkers, dude. As far as if we're doing a breakdown, I think Burrow's playing better than Tannehill. I think Jamar Chase is better, and don't eat me up here, guys, but I'm being serious. I think A.J. Brown, he's better than A.J. Brown right now. And A.J. Brown is slightly better than Julio. So I have Jamar Chase over A.J. Brown. I think they have the best receiver. And they have 3 receivers where Tennessee has 2. And Mixon's comparable. He's no Derrick Henry, not stating he is. I just like them more offensively, and truthfully, their defense is a little better. And Tennessee, I think one of the reasons is their inconsistent offensive line play. And now Taylor Lewan's hurt. There's a lot there. I got the Bengals at 3 and Titans at 4. But I love the Titans.
That's the closest out of the 5 for me. I think Bills 1, Chargers 2, and I do think the Bengals and Titans are interchangeable. Spoiler alert, on my top 10 rankings, which we're going to get to shortly, on my 10 spot, I have Titans/Bengals. It's like hard for me to pick which one I want to put at 10.
That's great.
They're both. I like them. I like them both. And man, Derrick Henry. That's the only word that comes out.
Yeah.
And you saw it to the Bills. They literally had 7 in the box. And then Julio runs a simple drag route. He's 7 yards wide open because the linebackers have to commit. And Derrick Henry's just freaky. He's freaky.
Yeah. New segment on the weekly pod here. We call this Real Talk, so we're going to call this segment Real and Fake. We're going to give something that we said that turned out to be real. We predicted it, and it happened. Or something that we predicted and it turned out to be fake. Didn't end up happening. For me, and I was just talking about it, I would not shut up that Jamar Chase was going to be a Cincinnati Bengal. It happened, and I said that it would be. This isn't just like they're drafting some wide receiver out of Alabama. They're drafting a teammate of his that they were able to break records with, and it literally seems like it's like they went from college to the NFL and they're same ordeal. They score on everyone. Jamar Chase, I think, has 5 touchdowns through six weeks this year. I mean, he's been fantastic. He's that guy. I was right. I nailed that on the head. Feel free to go back and look at the draft pod and the AFC North breakdown. I said it 2 different times. I thought Jamar Chase would be fantastic. And I posted on the Facebook page when all y'all said he was dropping passes in the preseason. I said, just watch. He'll be the best. And he's been great. I wish I would have tweeted this out, but, when I was at my one of my top fantasy football leagues that we do every year, and we get the guys together and we talk a bunch of stuff, and somebody drafted, I believe it was Tyler Boyd before Jamar Chase, and I said, why wouldn't you draft the best Bengals receiver? And they said, he's the 3rd best Bengals receiver. I said, you're completely wrong. I mean, it's not even close. Yeah, Jamar Chase. He's that guy. Fake. AFC West Prediction pod. I said straight up that I thought it was the most predictable division, and I didn't think it'd be very exciting. I thought Kansas City would run away with it, and I thought the other teams were mediocre. I thought the Chargers would be exciting and hard to predict, but I did not think they would be what we're seeing now. With that said, obviously I was way wrong. Kansas City right now looks like they might be weak. I'm not going to completely destroy them at 3-3, but I mean, they definitely don't look like they're running away with the division. Let's just say that. And obviously, the Broncos started 3-0, and we just talked about the Raiders at 4-2, and the Chargers at 4-2.
Yeah. I'll start off where my predictions became real, and I'll keep it in the same spot. When it came to the division breakdowns, this was one of the divisions we disagreed on the most because I thought the Broncos were a much better team. I stood on the table for Justin Herbert since before he was drafted. And then when it comes to the Chiefs, I had questions their defense. I didn't know it'd be as bad as it is now. And the Raiders, under John Gruden, which I know they're not anymore, but they've started all their seasons hot. It's been the second half of the season. And I said this division's going to be close. And my goodness, it might even be closer than I projected it would be. But when you have two teams at 4-2 and two teams at 3-3, and it seems like the Raiders, who I thought would be the worst in the division, they always play the Chiefs and Chargers well. They always play them well. They play the Broncos well. They play in division very good. So I was spot on with this division. It's still anybody's. I still think the Chargers have a good chance of winning it. Chiefs have a good chance of winning it. And guess what? So do the Broncos and Raiders. Where I was wrong is I couldn't wait to tell people how the Cowboys are going to be bad. I mean, it just seemed like anytime someone wanted to bring it up, I said the Giants and Washington would be 1-2 in the division. Cowboys, Eagles 3-4. That's flipped. Eagles are still terrible, but the Cowboys 5-1, and their only loss, they won the turnover battle by 4 and played the defending Super Bowl champions at their place on Banner Night. Lost by 2 points. Lost at the gun to a field goal. So Cowboys are a top 6 team in my opinion. You could put them even higher, and I think that when it comes to the NFC, they're one of the 3 teams to beat. So I mean, the Cowboys, I swung and missed, and ended up being fake.
Yeah, that happens. Been there. Funny that you bring up the Cowboys because they were the one team in the NFC East that I thought would be good. I was down on everybody else, and I'm still down on Washington, and they proved to me that that's what they are. They were a 7-9 team. But are we ready for power rankings?
I think we are.
I think we're there. I'll go ahead and start off this week, and it's really funny that your 10 is Bengals/Titans. Because I did a 10A and 10B, Bengals in Cleveland. And the reason I did that is because the Bengals are trending up and seem relatively healthy. The Browns are trending down and seem relatively hurt. With that, I think there's a lot to prove for both teams. I'm not sitting here saying that the Bengals are a playoff team yet, because I still think the Browns probably are. But at the same token, it's like, man, the Bengals they're winning their games and the Browns aren't winning their games. So it's hard to say. So I have them at a dead knot tie at 10. I will say this: if Cleveland loses to Denver this week and they're beat up, they're in trouble. They're in a lot of trouble, and I know that they have a lot of things going on.
We already know no Nick Chubb and no Kareem Hunt. Will the tackles be back? We don't know. Baker, there's talk Case Keenum might start this week after he re-separated the shoulder. It's tough for Cleveland right now. It's tough.
It's bad. It's really bad. It's really bad. Coming in at number 9, they did enough to get themselves back in the top 10. And I'm not sold on them. I'm not writing them off as a Super Bowl favorite, but Kansas City. They're doing enough. They're scoring on everybody. They haven't really lost any games from not scoring. They do have some defensive issues, but they did go on a 21-0 run to close the game against Washington. It's enough to get them at 9. 8, I think this team's slightly better. They did beat them, and they're in their own division. I got the Chargers at 8. I predicted them to lose to Baltimore. I did not expect them to get annihilated. I thought Herbert would play a lot better. And I was willing to say that if he went into Baltimore and put it down on him, that I was going to basically say he's the best player in the league. He got humbled. I expected more of him, but that's all right. Chargers at 8. Packers at 7. Packers are slowly climbing up this list because After they got embarrassed, and I think that's the easiest way to say it, is embarrassed week 1, they have done nothing but win. And I don't even think they played one close game, and it was with a team that I love. It's the Bengals. So Packers at 7. I'm not as high on this team as you. I did have them at 2 last week. I love their quarterback. I love their wide receivers. Buffalo. I dropped Buffalo down because, truthfully, they have 2 losses against arguably the 2 best teams they've played outside of Kansas City. So they're 2-3 in games that I would rank on the season, and I just need to see more of them. I need to see more. I think at this point they fall in the Washington category with me, except they weren't a 7-9 team last year. I think they're a really good team, but I don't know that they're that much improved over last year. I just haven't seen that. They're still a very good offensive team, but the pass rush isn't as good as everybody says it is. Their defense isn't as great as everybody makes it out to be. They played a lot of bad teams, and truly, they don't run the ball that great. So they're still a really good team. They do everything as good as they did last year. They're still a Super Bowl threat because of it. I think all 5 teams above them are probably better, and I think I would take them heads up today. 5, the Rams. I love the Rams. I don't even know why they drop on this list. They've literally lost 1 game, and they're to my number 1 team. Spoiler. The Rams should be probably higher, but I like the 4 teams ahead of them just a little bit more. 4, Dallas. Dallas they lost week 1 to Tampa, and they have done nothing but win since. And to be honest, they look incredibly flawed, but they still win. They're super penalized. They do a lot of random things on defense. Trayvon Diggs is so good that you think their defense is good, but it's actually not. They don't actually have that great of a defense. They give up a lot of passing yards to just about everybody. And Trayvon Diggs has a bunch of picks and a bunch of pick sixes, so we think they're really good. And they are solid, and they are improved. But their offense is so good. Like, super good. And what they're let's preserve his career since we're paying him so much. I love that they've just owned that and they're working it in. And by the way, them drafting CeeDee Lamb 2 years ago, what a home run. What a time to look at yourself in the mirror and just say, there's a player available. We didn't think he would be. He doesn't fit our draft board, but he's the best player by a mile. Let's draft him. What a literally pat yourselves on the back. That not too many teams have the balls to do that. Sometimes they're like, we just let's let him slide because he's not on our draft board. Well, tough. He's the best player available by a mile, and they did it. Home run to them. 3, Tampa. Don't care what you say about their defense. They outscore everybody they play. Literally, they outscore everybody. They're one time, and I called this out. They lost at LA. In my opinion, they were looking forward to New England. I think they got caught, and LA played a great game. But they were even able to score on them. So watch out for them. They're, in my opinion, they're my Super Bowl favorite out of the NFC. 2, I have this team has been a roller coaster for me. And you know who it is by process of elimination at this point. But I predicted them to win the AFC North. Backed out because they literally got just obliterated with injuries. More than you could possibly fathom in a span of 2.5 weeks. And they look like they can't be beat after literally 1 week of week 1. They get shocked on the road in a hostile environment, and then the very next week they play their biggest rival by far as of right now is in a winning standpoint. They're kryptonite. They can't beat Kansas City. They beat Kansas City after coming back from behind. They have a let me up game in Detroit that I'll defend. You just had to beat Patrick Mahomes and a team that you haven't been able to beat. Of course, you're going to come out with a little bit flat. And they kick a 60-some-yard field goal. They beat a hungry and desperate Colts team after coming from behind. They're doing a lot of things that I don't think we expected Baltimore to do at this point. I think Baltimore looks really good. I love them. They're trending up for me. I can't wait till they play Pittsburgh. I can't wait till they play Cleveland. I can't wait till they play Cincinnati. What they're doing against everybody else, I want to see them do this in the division and see if they're really for real. I have them at 2 though. And then number 1, it's Arizona. I expect them to lose this week, and they blew out Cleveland. Say what you want. I don't care if they're injured. This team has beaten everybody they've played, and they've played a lot of really good teams. They played LA. They played Cleveland. They played Seattle, maybe.
I don't know. Here. I don't really even remember who all they played.
They beat the Niners. They've beaten everybody. Literally everybody. Yeah. So, I love Arizona at 1. That's my list.
All right, some similarities, some differences. Our top 6 gets a little muddled, but I'll go ahead and start. Number 10, the Titans. Same thing with kind of like the Ravens. They got destroyed with injuries, and then it's still an NFL team. I know it's the Jets, but even with all the injuries, they lost in New York at overtime. A lot of times teams have a weird blemish or a loss they shouldn't have on their roster. It's the Titans. And, as bad as we say they are, their defense is bad, this and that. We don't, Arthur Smith's gone, and they're still 4-2. And if they don't slip up to the Jets or have those injuries, they're most likely 5-1. Their punter, tight end, both wide receivers, all out against the Jets, and they lost in overtime. Number 9 is the Chiefs. They're back on the list. They averaged 3.1 points per drive this season. Through 6 games, they've only punted 10 times. This offense is still nuclear. It's still the best offense in the league. Problem is they turn the ball over a little bit too much. They're number 1 in turnovers. If they clean that up, this team's going to do what they did in the second half last week, walk through teams. Biggest problem, they're allowing 7 yards per play on defense. That's tough. You have such a good offense, such a bad defense, little room for error. But they're number 9. Number 8, Chargers. They go across country into a buzzsaw right now that is the Ravens. Maybe one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now. Lamar Jackson's different than anything else that defense is going to face. And Lamar Jackson, he did whatever he wanted. He's looked amazing this year. Can't say enough about him. But Chargers at 8. Number 7, same as you again. We're at the same here. Packers. They're at a league high right now. 16 straight games not allowing a 300-yard passer. Even with Jair Alexander hurt some games. They don't allow the deep ball. They keep everything short. They force you to kick field goals or punt, and they say Aaron Rodgers is going to outscore you. Devontae Adams, he's just doesn't matter how many or who you put on him. He gets the ball often, and he's again, if one of those two guys gets hurt, Packers are off my top 10. But guess what? They're not hurt, and they beat everything you throw at them. So Packers at 7. My 6 through 1, I think that if any of these teams played as I go through this list, I would take the team above them to beat them. Number 6, I have the Cowboys. Again, with 5 teams ahead of them, I still think that there's 26 teams that they would beat in the NFL if they played today. I would take the Cowboys. Unfortunately, I think they would lose to the 5 teams ahead of them, and they've already lost to one of them. But Dak Prescott looks good. I do feel like that game's score was a lot closer than it could have been against the Patriots. They had a few unfortunate turnovers, but credit the Patriots there. But they get the win in a hostile environment for a team, that's fighting for their first win at home. And Cowboys at 6. Either way, I think these top 6 are definitive, and our top 6 are the same, just a different order.
Like our top 9 were the same.
Yeah, but I do think there is a gap after the Packers from 6 to 1, personally. Number 5. And this is so hard because you look at these top 5 teams and they're all really good. But my number 5, I have Tampa Bay. I think they do have a lot of secondary issues. But as Jeff said, this offense, every offense I'm about to say, even from the Packers, Cowboys, the whole list, their offenses are ridiculous right now. But Tampa, Tom Brady, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, goodness me, Antonio Brown. They don't even have Gronk right now. Leonard Fournette's, running like he did for LSU. The team is looking really good. They deserve to be higher, but I think every team deserves a spot on this list at the top. So I'm not taking it to the grave, but right now I have Tampa at 5. Number 4, I do have the Bills. They do fall for me from 1 to 4. Again, against the Titans, they had more first downs, more yards, more plays, more time of possession. Unfortunately, the Bills are 26th in the NFL and turning red zone trips into touchdowns. They're only doing that at 55%. They had to settle for 3 field goals, and if they would have went to overtime, it would have been a 4th field goal in the red zone. They cruised down the field, and in the red zone, Maybe that's Josh Allen's kryptonite. It's the opposite of Lamar Jackson. Once he gets in the red zone, I mean, it's a touchdown. But unfortunately, the Titans were able to crunch time defense in the red zone, steal a win. I still think the Bills are a top 4 team in the league. Number 3, the Ravens. They lose their first game. They win the next 5, and they are Lamar Jackson's playing incredible. They have a great defense. Jeff's mad at me that I put the Rams over them, but if the Rams and Ravens played right now today, I personally would take the Rams. I'm going to go right into that. Stafford playing again. This team, we talked about how awesome they were at the beginning. They come out and they beat Tampa pretty handily. Their only loss is to the only undefeated team in their division. I do think if we're splitting hairs, that's why I give them the 2 spot over these teams. Their only loss is to, in our opinion, the best team in the league right now, which is the Cardinals. Kyler Murray is completing 74% of his passes on the season. He's making the right read. When they're incomplete, he's throwing it where he should have. DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore, James Conner, Chase Edmonds. Now Zach Ertz they're going to have going into next week. This offense is ridiculous. Chandler Jones, J.J. Watt, Isaiah Simmons, Murphy Jr., Budda Baker. This team has playmakers everywhere. They seem to have the leadership right, both on offense and defense, from key positions and key players. They're not screwing up anything on time management. Anytime you make a mistake, they make you pay. You can keep Kyler Murray in the pocket, and he'll beat you. You can let him get out of the pocket, and he'll destroy you. So until this team suffers a significant injury or something, I don't see them moving out of 1. They're going to win a lot of games. They're in a tough division, but they already showed they could beat the 49ers, Rams, and the Seahawks without Russell Wilson. I mean, I don't see the Cardinals losing a ton of games, and right now they're in the driver's seat for that first seed, and I don't know how you can't have the Cardinals at number 1. But again, just to recap, the Rams, Ravens, Bills, Tampa, and Cowboys. I do believe and if you had them in any order, I would just have to nod. I don't know if I could really make a firm argument on why one team should be over the other, but that's my list, and it's got 4 NFC teams and 2 AFC teams. I think the Bills and Ravens are the top 2 teams in the AFC.
Yeah. No, I truly, like, I was nodding in disappointment because I thought the Ravens have done enough to get to 2. But I totally get the Rams being at 2. And to be honest, you could have said anybody in the top 6, and you could have flushed them in any order, and I would just be what you said. I'd just nod, be like, yeah, no, I get it. Because you don't even have to explain it. Like, I just get it because those 6 teams have really separated themselves. And truthfully, the Packers are nipping at that 6th spot. Like, they're right there too. I do want to point something out. You just said something a minute ago about Arizona, how they got ballers everywhere. Last Wednesday, I believe it was. I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, last Wednesday, Colin Cowherd on his personal podcast had the Cardinals GM Steve Keem.
It was such a good episode.
Fantastic, 30-ish minutes.
Oh my gosh, it was
awesome. It was a great listen, and it literally, by the end of it, I thought to myself, am I rooting for the Cardinals the rest of the year?
I think, seriously.
Yeah, it was seriously a great listen. Highly recommend it. Anyways, that's our power rankings. Gosh, the NFL right now. Like, how good is the NFL right now? Holy cow.
As a Steelers fan, if you would have told me after, the way things are looking, we're going to be 3-3 going into the bye. And then you tell us on our bye week, we come out against Cleveland, whose injury list is a scroll. Who knows? I would like to let it be known on this Tuesday. I'm not trying to, say anything shocking, but the Browns are 4th in the AFC North. So just in case you guys didn't know how the standings at, things are normal again. Browns are last in the AFC North. However long it lasts, I don't know. But it's nice that the Steelers are back above the Browns. Okay, I know we're looking up at the Bengals, and that's gonna hurt. But goodness, next Sunday, man, going over to my dad's, we're getting the wings out and brownies, man. That's far ahead though. But NBA tonight, Jeff?
NBA. Holy cow. we could literally bust out a whole nother pod today about the NBA, but we're gonna do it for you guys tomorrow. Okay, we will give our East, our West predictions. We'll talk a couple storylines, and of course, what me and Brad really liked. I hope you guys dug it too. We're gonna do our top 30 NBA players draft style, as we like to do, to keep the bias out of it.
We are gonna keep bias out of it. I have no idea right now who I'm gonna draft first when it gets to me. I don't really know. There's a lot of players that could 77 be really high up on the list. You know, I'll just have to take a good look at the all the players that are on there. So who knows who it could be at the top there for me.
So for the YouTube listeners, obviously, he's talking about Luka. For those listening at home that can't pick it up, he's talking about Luka. We'll flip a coin so that if Brad gets the number one pick, you know who it is. Otherwise, it'll be my pick. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening. Real talk.
Peace.